What's up, duelists? So before I get into this video, before I get into everything, I do need to give you guys a warning. This video, I am going to be talking about some pretty serious subject matter that involves self-harm and suicide. So if you guys aren't comfortable hearing about that kind of stuff, just tune in for the next video or whatever, but just don't watch this if you aren't comfortable hearing about that. And if you yourself are struggling with that kind of stuff, I'll include some resources in the description or the comments or whatever, for you guys to sort of, if you need to just like talk to someone or whatever, I'll include some resources. So with that being said, I'm gonna sort of try to segue away from that into like this weekend was like one of the best weekends of my life, like legit. This last weekend was the North American National Championships for Yu-Gi-Oh! And for those of you who don't know, they had a massive Edison format, aka OTS Time Wizard 2010 April format tournament. And I heard about it first on the weekend of the IRL RBET, and I decided, fuck it. I may never get a chance to play in one of these ever again, especially because I'm the one hosting the RBETs. I want to do my best. I want to compete in this. I want to try and win it. I want to see how far I can go, and I want to see what I can do. And so I tested a whole bunch. I played a whole bunch of decks. I recorded some of that testing for you guys. I hid a lot of information from you guys. And this is the deck I ended up playing. This is a fairy deck. There's a lot of interesting tech cards, a lot of interesting decisions in this deck. I'll just jump right into it. No, I won't just jump right into it, because there was a couple things I wanted to say before we got into it. This national event was a record-breaking national event. It was the first national event where the side event entrance exceeded the main event entrance. This is the first Konami event where this has happened, which is insane. And you want to know why that happened? It's because there was this insane 300-person Edison tournament, and on top of that, over 110 Edison flights fired over the course of the weekend, which is unbelievable. That is crazy. That's like 1,500 people there just for Edison, roughly-ish. I could be miscalculating a little bit, but you get the idea. That's a lot of people there for Edison. Well, a little bit under 1,500. It's like 1,200 people there for Edison, but that's fucking crazy. Like, in terms of just turnout and like your guys' support and you guys making a community that can do this type of stuff and has fun doing this type of stuff. Like, thank you guys so much. Like, this weekend was honestly a dream. It was literally, everyone I met was so cool. Everyone I met was so nice. But let's talk about the deck. I'm sure we'll get to the people I met and all that other stuff afterwards. So this is the fairy deck that I played. I was kind of stuck between fairies and dragons. I had some other ideas for dragons, but I'll leak those at another time. But this is sort of a conceptual build. I thought about this build a lot, but I had never really tested this exact configuration. And I probably should have, because there's one big glaring mistake, which cost me a couple games in the tournament, but we'll get to that. The big tech card here is the main deck pulling the rug. So I was looking at all of my fairy replays, and I was trying to quantify all of the games that I was losing. And basically what was happening was the games that I was losing were the games where my opponent was resolving either Deep Sea Diva or Kai's the Shadow Monarch. And those are the cards that just beat this deck. Every other card you can kind of just play through, and it's not a big deal. But those two cards definitely can cause some problems. One card, Ally of Justice Catastor, is an issue. Junk Synchron to a lesser degree, but that didn't come up as much. And then Caius banishing your Angel Recruiter and then just hitting you for 2,400 and being something you can't really crash into effectively is also huge. So those two cards were really annoying. And then on top of that, I had this really big meta call, this really big meta prediction that there was going to be a lot of Hero Frogs, a lot of Diva Hero, and a lot of Hero Beat, as well as a good amount of Vayu Turbo and Black Wings. Those were like the 5 big decks that were on my radar. And against all of those decks, I actually think pulling the rug is quite good. Against Black Wings, yes, it only hits Blizzy, but that's really the only card this deck cares about. Everything other than Blizzy doesn't really threaten you. You just Shining Angel into DD Warrior Lady and then banish it. It's not a big deal. Either that, or you just Honest over it, or you Alchemist trade effectively into Ashura, or your Raikou pops it, or whatever. Speaking of Raikou, I decided to play 3 Raikou. So the meta that's happening right now, basically, against me in particular, but also against other people, is that when you see a set monster, you don't attack it. And that's the meta. And so in the case of that, Nova Summoner becomes quite bad, and to a degree, Shining Angel also becomes pretty bad, but at least Shining Angel can one crash into DD Warrior Lady, so it's like slightly better. So I wanted a proactive set card that does really well when it's not being attacked, and I think Raikou is just the best option for this deck. You want to have a turn 1 set Raikou because if your opponent doesn't attack it, let's say they set some back row or whatever, you just flip your Raikou, pop the back row, maybe hit a few fairies, and try to set up for a Christia. That being said, if they do attack into your Raikou with something like a Goblin Zombie or whatever, I didn't predict a lot of zombies, or like a Swamp Frog or something, it's pretty bad. And also, if you're going second and they Caius your Raikou, it's pretty bad. But I do have those two pulling the rugs to stop that sort of Caius play. And then on top of that, besides the pulling the rugs, I also have Solemn Judgment and Triple Herald of Orange Light. So we have like 6 negates to really stop those big payoff cards. And the little payoff cards, we can just trade 1-for-1 with DD Warrior Lady and Raikou. And then eventually like try to land a Christia or try to de-alk loop the opponent or beat them down with Soul of Purity and Light. That was the game plan of this build. And the game plan of this build honestly worked perfectly. It was so amazing throughout this tournament. Every time I set a monster, my opponent didn't attack it. Actually, I actually calculated this. All of the matches where I set a monster, my opponent only attacked into the set monster twice throughout the entire, I think 9 rounds that I played. My set monsters were only attacked twice, which is crazy. What people are doing now is they're just waiting till they have an effect to clear your set monster before they start to go for effects. So I think flip effect monsters are actually like, they're back in now. They're back in. And also people are cutting Nox too on top of that. So Raikou's pretty fucking good right now. I do have the double compulsory. This helps me, go second against Ally of Justice Catastor, which was an issue for this deck. And it also helps me deal with things like Drago. The Dragon deck is picking up in popularity. And a few other cards that are like pretty annoying, like Vanity's Fiend, opposing Christias if I need to deal with those. Or just, chain to Light and Darkness Dragon if I go up against Mausoleum decks. I just wanted to have extra outs to like bullshit synchros and stuff. Mainly this is for Catastor and to blank Gemini Sparks, but for the most part it was really solid this whole weekend. Starlight Road is another card that I never play in this deck, and I just wanted like a cheese card because you're playing a big tournament. You just kind of need some haymakers in your deck, and Starlight Road, it's like my mix-up card. I don't normally play it. I wanted people to think I don't normally play it, and so that when they go for the Heavy Storm, they're thinking it's Legacy of Yada, it's this, it's that. I'll flip Starlight Road and get a Stardust and just crush them. That being said, I drew Starlight Road like once the whole weekend, so it didn't really come up, but if it did, that would have been cool, There was one time where I wish I had drawn it. It would have won me the game, but we'll get into that. The sideboard is where things get really spicy. I think that if you're playing fairies right now, you do need at least 5 ways to clear Light Mirror in the sideboard, whether that's triple Dust Tornado and double Twister or double Trap Eater or whatever. I elected to go with double Breaker. Trap Eater was definitely on my radar, especially because more and more people are leaving in Oppression versus me, but Breaker's just more consistent, and Breaker can also hit Deep Prison, which is an issue for this deck. So I definitely went with Breaker. Trap Eater does have the upside of hitting Skill Drain, which did come up in one of my matches, but we'll get into that as well. I think you need the 5. The third, Pulling the Rug, obviously for Frogs, Monarchs, and Diva Hero. And then this card right here, Needle Ceiling, which was this was one of the 2 MVPs. This was one of the 2 MVPs in the sideboard. I wish I had sided 2. It was so fucking good. It was literally like Torrential number 2. Against the Frog decks, the only time you're ever really losing is when they set up Dupe Lock and they start like looping their guy. And the best card in that situation is Torrential Tribute, unless you're counting Needle Ceiling, which is even better because you can set your own monster, and Needle Ceiling only pops face-ups, so you can just like chain to their effect, blow up their whole board, and like you keep your monster. It's literally Regeki versus Frogs that doesn't proc Dupe Frog because you can chain link to it. It's insane, and it wins in the situation in which you lose, so it's like a complete flip card, which is exactly what this deck wants. Especially, you need those blowout cards for Frogs. I was a little bit over Mask of Restrict just because Mask of Restrict needs to sit around for a while, and the issue with Mask of Restrict is it's really difficult for you to deal with set Dupe Frog under Mask of Restrict. Even though we do have the 3 Raikous, the 3 Warrior Ladies, it's still really annoying to deal with it, and I felt that Mask of Restrict was a little bit too preventative. I wanted something more reactive, like Needle Ceiling, so that when they did go for the whole big frog thing, I can just get my +3 and win. Like, I feel like that's just way more crushing than just hoping they don't draw the out, which, of course, they're going to. They're going to have Unifrogs. They're going to have whatever the fuck else, Stratos. They're going to have so many ways to pop face-up massacre restrict and then just like unlock their whole shit. I wanted to get that hard +3 and then just close the game out, and needle sealing was excellent for that, especially like in testing especially, but in the matches that I had it was very good. Double knock, I'm just scared of Snowman Eater, honestly. Double Kaiku, this card was insane. This was the other MVP. The big change I want to make to this deck moving forward is I want to cut Christias, and I want to add 2 Kaiku and 1 Tragodia to the main. And I want to cut all 3 Christias. We'll get into that. Double Thunder King, they were not good. I wish I had Sided Banishers instead. And then double Cyber Dragon, they were great. Can't complain about the Cyber Dragons at all. So that was the list. I came up with it literally on the flight there. I came up with sideboard plans on the flight there. I had tested like 9 other fairy lists. I'm sure I'll leak them throughout the coming weeks after we get all the, of course, coverage from the Nats event out as well. And I think this list is great. I think it was just like a really great meta call. If you predict a lot of Hero Frogs, a lot of Diva Hero, pulling the rug is just like the best card versus that deck. So you might as well just put it in your main deck. And there's something that hits in just about every deck. Against Quick Draw, you can hit Debris Caius. Against Vayu Turbo, you hit Armageddon Knight Caius. Against, Blackwings, you still hit Blizzy. Against Fairies, it does nothing, but nobody plays Fairies, so who fucking cares? Against Dragons, it does nothing, but that matchup is brutal. That matchup is more about just like finding removal for Drago. So yeah, maybe it's not great if you predict a lot of Dragons, but against Dragon Turbo, it does hit Debris Dragon, and against the Fitz Dragon list, it does hit Debris Dragon. So it's not a total blank, but it is pretty bad against Dragons. So it just depends on where you're at. Against Hero Beat, if you're going first, it's pretty crazy. You just cut them off the Stratos. Pretty difficult to do that otherwise. It was definitely a really strong card for this weekend, and I think it was a great meta pick, and it's something you should definitely consider if you expect those cards or those decks in your meta. Let me go ahead and get into my matchups. So one thing I could do about this tournament is I could complain about how scuffed it was. It was really scuffed. I'm gonna be honest. It was just a very scuffed tournament. They started about an hour late. They were understaffed. They had no communication with whether or not when we started day 2, when we started day 1 even, where the pairings were going to be posted. They had no digital pairing posted. It was just a messy event. It was a really messy event. And I understand how much it takes to run an event, and I understand how much it costs to staff people and book a venue. So I'm not saying like, and again, I think the staff who was on hand did an okay job, There were some judge rulings that were abysmal, but again, like, they're short-staffed, they're working with a bunch of people, and they have to make the event happen, and for what they had, they made the event happen. So that's really all I can say is, like, I'm just happy it happened. And one thing I do want to say, instead of, like, actually complaining, is I want to compliment you guys if you entered that event. You guys were so patient, and you guys were so, like, yeah, you complained a little bit, but, like, you guys were very respectful of the judges. Even when they gave you shitty judge rulings, you guys were very respectful of, like, everyone around you and stuff. It was just, the vibe was so good that the event went well regardless. And that was like the sickest thing to me, is that just like, you guys were like, okay, these are little things that are happening, but we're all just happy to be here playing Edison, and it's not going to be a big deal, and it'll eventually get figured out. And that's exactly what happened. It eventually got figured out. It was pretty scuffed though. Round 1 started kind of late, and then I get paired up against Gladiator Beasts. So I lose a die roll. I get dust shooted. Pretty difficult way to start a tournament. And my opponent takes a fair bit of time on the dust shoot decision. And let me say, it was not a hard dust shoot decision. Then he activates Gladiator Beast War Chariot, and he takes a fair bit of time to resolve that card. And then he makes 4 other moves, and he takes approximately 1.5 to 2 minutes to make every move. And we're about 12 minutes into the timer on turn 1, and I'm like, you need to play faster or I'm going to call a judge. And I'm happy I said something then, because had I not, we might not have gotten a chance to finish out the match. He was very upset. He felt like I was rushing him, but at the same time, like, you can't take 12 minutes on turn 1. Like, you just can't do that. That's slow playing. Like, that's legit what it is. So I'm happy I said something. We did finish out the match. I clutched it in game 3 because I am the GOAT. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. I'm totally not the GOAT. There were way too many GOATs there for me to say that I'm the GOAT. But I clutched it. I top decked a Kaiku when he had 4 back row and an E-Quest, and none of the 4 back row outed the Kaiku. And he just lost to an 1800 vanilla, which is another argument for playing Kaiku, is that it solos Glads because they can't do shit against it. So yeah, I clutched it in game 3, and that was beautiful. That was my first round, and I started off with a win in a matchup that could be difficult if they have Dimensional Fissure, and I was feeling really good. My prep was good. I didn't feel like I misplayed at all, and I was just like, wow, like it was just a beautiful game of fairies. Round 2, I get paired up against Diva Zombies, and I start off with one of my favorite openings in this build, which is normal summon DD Warrior Lady set Pulling the Rug. This is one of my favorite openings because they always predict Book of Moon. So they'll try to either Evil Guy Caius, banish your stuff if they're playing Diva Hero, or they'll try to like summon Stratos, attack into your DD Warrior Lady to get that +1 trade, or they'll try to do a bunch of stuff that just loses to Rug. Like in this instance, what happened was he mind controlled my DD Warrior Lady, and then he summoned Deep Sea Diva, and I rugged the Deep Sea Diva, and he lost. So that was awesome. He lost game 1, and then game 2, he sided in my body as a shield to stop Herald of Orange Light, but yeah, the power cards he needs to resolve are Deep Sea Diva and Caius, and both of those lost to Pulling the Rug in that game, and he just had dead my body as a shield the entire game, basically, and he couldn't play because he couldn't resolve his power cards, and so we just kind of walked all over him. Like, we didn't even need to go into, like, a stalled out game state because we just had, like, more Solemns than should be legal. Round 3, I played against Hero Beat. Game 1, I was able to banish a couple of his monsters, and he was pretty monster light, so I knew my game plan was to just like beat him down. He had flipped a skill drain a little bit after I had banished those 2 monsters, and so I was like, okay, I can't rely on my effects. I just need to aggro him out and then like hope he just like misses on monsters, and that's exactly what happened game 1. So I got kind of lucky. Those skill drain versions usually don't play a lot of monsters, so it's pretty easy for you to aggro them out. One thing I did notice is he had Neo-Spacian Gramble in the main deck. Game 2, he had a nut draw. It was like the most insane Hero Beat draw I've ever seen. He opened Future Fusion, E-Call, Solemn, Light Mirror, Double Honest, Double Miracle Fusion. Which is crazy. I mean, he didn't open with all those cards, obviously, but those were his draws that game, which is unbelievable. So obviously we lost that one. And then game 3, we were able to win it based off of a clutch Trap Dust Shoot. I actually left in Trap Dust Shoot because I noticed he left in Neo-Spacian Grand Mole in game 2, and I was like, oh, he left that in, and that card's really good against us, and we don't really have a lot of great ways to answer it with only 1 D prison. So I decided I'm gonna leave in the Dust Shoot just as a way to hit the Grand Mole, and it ended up coming up, and it ended up winning us the game by taking that Grand Mole. So I was like, wow, lucky, sometimes lucky. Round 4, this is where things start to get challenging. So you start off the tournament at 3-0, and I was like pretty confident moving into round 4 because, again, I was really happy with the build. I think I did a great job assessing the meta, assessing the way people like to play, and I think I was well equipped to do well at this tournament. I'd tested so much with this deck. I'd played hundreds of matches with fairies before this event, off camera, on camera, with friends in paper. We'll get into that in a second. Round 4, I play against Hero Frog. Game 1, I set a Shining Angel, I set a Rug. He goes special, Evil Guy, sack for Caius, I rug it, I win. It was just like the most beautiful, like, yeah, I'm maining Rugs, what are you going to do about it type thing. Game 2, he opens up Stratos 1-for-1, which is the deck's best draw. We don't have a fairy for our Herald. We have a Herald in hand, but we have a DD Warrior Lady as our other monster. And my other 4 cards are Needle Ceiling, which is the MVP, of course, Starlight Road, Call of the Haunted, and Solemn Judgment. So that was my 6th starting hand, and he ends with 4 monsters in play, a set back row, and an Alias and a Swap Frog in hand that we know about. So I'm like, okay, my Needle Ceiling's just going to win this game, and we're just going to crush him. We're going to go +4, and the game's going to be over. So I draw for turn. It was, I think the 6th card I drew was the Starlight Road. I set the Warrior Lady, and then I set 4 cards, and I pass. He goes end phase Blind Dust, and he hits my Needle Ceiling. And I was just like, bro, what the fuck? I was like, how the hell? Oh my god. So I got 25%ed out of that game, and that was tough. That was a tilting loss. That was a really, really tilting loss. But I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm just, it's 1-1. We have game 3. I get to go first in game 3. So I'm like, okay. So we play game 3 out, and game 3 was like one of the closest, most tight games. And I just want to clarify, like, all of my opponents were good. All of them were very fucking good. I would not be surprised if any of them won this tournament. But this guy was a talented player. His name was Jacob. He ended up going undefeated after beating me into top 8. So he's a good player. Like, And we played this really intense grind game with a lot of different reads going on. Like, he had some good reads on my back row, I had some good reads on his hand, and like it was very back and forth. And it got to the point where we both had very few cards, and we both had very few life points. And his board is absolute zero. He has a Treeborn and Grave, and he top decks Caius. So that's his setup. And my setup is I have a Needle Ceiling, a Book of Moon, and Starlight Road set. And then I have a face-up DD Warrior Lady and a face-down Card Trooper. And so I'm thinking, like, okay, you know, he'll attack the Absolute Zero into the DD Warrior Lady. He'll pop both my monsters. I won't be able to road here, but that's okay. I'll draw a new card with the Card Trooper. And then if he brings back Treeborn and then sacks for Caius, what I can do is I can actually Needle Ceiling and then Chain Book on my own DD Warrior Lady, blow up the whole field, and then, well, not the whole field, blow up his whole field. And then when his Absolute Zero activates in a new chain, I road that and I win the game. So what he ended up doing was not bringing back Treeborn Frog. He sacrificed Absolute Zero to summon Caius, and then he tried to go for Chain Link 1 Caius, Chain Link 2 Absolute Zero. And unfortunately, him not understanding this ruling and going for this suboptimal play into the potential pulling the rug ended up winning him the game, because obviously you can't do that, and that's the rules. And yes, I could have pretended like I didn't know the rules, and I could have roaded the Absolute Zero, and while I wouldn't have gotten the Stardust Dragon, I would have probably won the game regardless, because all I would have to do is banish his Caius with the DD Warrior Lady and attack him for game with the Card Trooper. Either that or just book his Caius and run it over, that sort of thing. But I'm not a cheater, and I'm not a dick, and Nice Guys finished last, Kappa. No, I'm just kidding. And I told him you can't actually do that, and I wasn't able to road the Absolute Zero, and we ended up I ended up losing that game, which is infuriating. It was very infuriating. It was a close game, and I'm not upset at all anymore, but in the moment it was a little tilting. I was like, okay, whatever, X1, no big deal. At the time, we had calculated, because we thought it was going to be 9 rounds of Swiss and 256 players. Turns out it was 297 players, and so that messed up all of our math. We thought that X2 could make top 8. So at the time, I was like, I can still give another loss. I'm not too upset. Round 5, I play against another Hero Frog. Game 1, I open triple Christia and have no playable cards and just lose, which was awesome. I think my starting 6 was Christia's, Book, Compulse. And he started Stratos and killed me on turn 2, which was awesome. So we just down a game. Game 2, I went for the Strat, aka Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, who was excellent in that matchup. He stops Miracle Fusion, he eats the Treeborn Frogs, he basically just keeps the opponent from ever really doing anything, especially when we back him up with like a bunch of removal. And that's exactly what went down in Game 2, crushed him Game 2. Game 3 happens, and I set up a situation where I can top deck either Torrential, Needle Ceiling, or Christia to win the game, and I draw none of them, and I lose the game. And I think if I had played the game differently and not tried to set up for a top deck Christia, I probably could have won. So I thought about that game a lot. I didn't want to dwell on it too much during the actual match, but I think my play was not ideal in that game. I was trying to gamba a little bit, and I messed it up. But that's okay. Like I said, I thought X2 could still top 8. So I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll just win out, and I'll stop gambling, because that's stupid, and I shouldn't do that. So round 6, I get paired against Dragons. Miserable matchup, by the way. Kawaki Mero Drago just like completely shuts off this deck, but Raiko did a lot of heavy lifting. He was able to keep the Dragos clear for us, and we were able to take that one down. There was nothing super eventful about that game. Obviously, pulling the rug is very trash. He was playing Fitz's list. Snowman Eater is normally pretty good against fairies, but I have, 3 Raikos, so I'm pretty good at taking care of the set monster. One notable interaction that did happen was he did go out of his way to summon a Prime Material Dragon, I think in Game 3, to play around the Raikos that he knew about, and I was able to compulsory the Prime Material Dragon and win because of that. So that was a really cool interaction, and I think that's one of those things that that was pretty nice. So I'm 4-2, and I'm moving into round 7, and if I win this, I'm still live for top 8 in my head. At least that's what I believe. And this is where we get into kind of the serious subject matter of this video. So I found out about this event at the IRL RBET, and I just snap signed up for it. I snap bought my flight. I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to this. This was happening. I'm never going to miss this. This is my one chance. could be my one chance to play in an Edison tournament of this caliber, of not only players. I played against 5 great players, amazing people, all of them incredibly nice, incredibly cool. I've met so many amazing people at this event. I'm like, this might be my only chance to do this. And even though financially this was a dumb as fuck trip for me, because I'm buying last minute flights, I'm like, just have to stay with a bunch of people. I have to like do all this crazy shit, and I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. You know what? It's a once in a lifetime thing. Potentially, I'm just gonna send it. And the day after I like bought all the flights and everything, the day after the IRL RBET in the morning, I get a call that my little cousin and my best friend had taken his own life, and it was pretty earth shattering. I'm not gonna lie. It really shook me, and it still shakes me quite a bit. And it's something that's like, it'll probably take some time to get over, or not over, but get used to, I guess is what I should say. This is my now 7th time recording this video because I've not been able to make it through this segment without fucking falling apart, which is crazy. Those who are close to me already know that this has happened. It was really shocking news. It was really shitty. His name was Sam. He was a great kid. Way better man than I ever would be. And we used to play games together, so I knew that this was going to be a really hard event for me because it was going to remind me a lot of him, So, it was going to remind me a lot of us playing games together, and we played a lot of games together, even towards the end. He developed schizophrenia, or a schizophrenic disorder, in his early 20s, and those disorders are degenerative, even when medicated sometimes. And he slowly lost his mind, and it was really hard. And it's just like, it was really hard, man. I don't even know. It's not something I talk about a lot. There are a lot of things I don't talk about, obviously, with you guys, because it's mostly Yu-Gi-Oh talk, but that really fucked me up. And the funeral happened like a week before this event, or a week and a half before this event. And the day after the funeral, I was like, I had been basically struggling with my emotions every single day. I had been struggling to keep them under control every single day. I've been having like, not necessarily like manic outbursts, but I've been like crying like pretty heavily a lot. Like I said, I grew up with him, and we spent literally every day together of our lives for a very long time. So it was very difficult. And I'm trying to think how to say this. I knew basically that I wanted to come to this event still, to the Nationals event. And a lot of it dealt with like him and his attitude, and he, like I said, even towards the end, he definitely still wanted to game with me, even though it got increasingly harder for him. And he always used to beat me when we were younger, and obviously like that stopped being the case when he started struggling more and more. And one thing was true, he never gave up. So I didn't want to give up on this. I didn't want to cancel the flight. I didn't want to like disappear, which is what my brain was saying to do. I kind of wanted to push through it and see how well I could do, despite, feeling pretty bad. Cause I know like what I'm going through that's tough, right? But I know that a lot of people who are going to these events, they're also going through shit, and like they're still competing, and they're still pushing through it, and like that's inspiring to me. And seeing all of like the players show up, and like all of the community like come together like this is fucking inspiring to me. And it really drove me. Like the last few weeks, like I was able to like keep my shit together, because I'm like, I gotta wake up, I gotta test for this tournament, I gotta like make a video for you guys, I gotta like be on top of the RBET stuff, you know? And so, don't worry, this will tie into the round 7 here in a second. I know you guys don't want to hear my fucking life story, or maybe you do, I don't fucking know. But basically, yeah, it was tough. The day after the funeral, I basically knew that I had to, in order to do well in this event, I had to fight through feeling like shit. And that was the day I obviously felt the worst. And so I called Alex Simo, and he was a great friend. And I was like, look, man, I just want to duel today. Like, can we link up and, like, can we just play? And, we linked up and we played like 8 hours of paper Yu-Gi-Oh! We came up with like a bunch of different fairy lists. It was super cathartic. And, yeah, I was able to at least autopilot through feeling terribly, which is as much as I could have asked for on such short notice of preparation. Like I said, the game doesn't give a shit what's going on in your life. The game doesn't care. The game doesn't care if you're hurting or upset or whatever. The game only cares if you make the right plays. That's all the game cares about. So if you can't pull yourself together, then you're not fit to win the tournament, and that's just the way it goes. And that's the unfortunate reality of competing. And I mean, not unfortunate, but that's part of the game. You know, part of the game is like handling yourself and handling your own emotions. Like, let's say you get tilted, for example, or let's say you're going through some hard stuff in your real life. Handling that stuff is a large part of the game, and I needed to practice it. And I went over to his house during the hardest time, and like I practiced during it just to make sure I could handle it. And you can only practice so much, is what I learned. And so round 7, I sit down from across my opponent, and every round, you know, I'm introducing myself to my opponents, and I'm like, you're like, hey, what's your name? You know, that sort of stuff. And I asked him what his name was, and he said his name was Sam, which is my cousin's name. And yeah, I just kind of fell apart. I made some really dumb plays. My head was not in the game. I was thinking about him, and like I said, the game doesn't care. So you swing your Christia and your other monster into a Mirror Force, and didn't need to do it. I didn't need to do it. I was winning the game no matter what. All I had to do was switch Christia to defense. He couldn't have ever beat it. He was playing Diva Zombies. Can't beat that. So yeah, I just played like an idiot, and I deserved to lose. And that's tough. And that's life, you know? I don't know where I'm going with all this, but like, you know, I'm not the only person who's going through something hard, and I don't deserve special treatment in a game because of that. And so after that loss, I was like, yeah, I fucked that up. I fucked it up bad, and I could have done better, and I should have done better because I'm a better player than that. And I don't make mistakes like that. And just that one little thing, you know, like threw me off, and nothing could have prepared me for that. I don't think anything could have prepared me for that. And so I ended the day 4-3, which is really disappointing. It's really disappointing. I think I had a good shot. I think I had a good shot with this list. I think I was playing really well up until that point. I had made one mistake that cost me a loss, and then I thought I could bounce back, but you know, sometimes it's not meant to be, and that's Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think the people who did really well in this tournament absolutely deserve to do well. They played better than I did, and they did really well because of that, and that's awesome. I think that in Edison format, the fact that you can do better than someone and you can get rewarded for it, that is cool. That's why I love this format. That's why I'm happy that I lost because of my mistakes. Honestly, it says a lot for this format. It says a lot about the people who decided to like show up and really kill it. The top 8 was incredible. It was 8 decks, none of which had topped the Shonen in 2010, which just shows how much we as a community have grown, not only in terms of like our knowledge, but our deck building skill and our ability to adapt to metagames and our ability to develop new plans and like just see things through different perspectives and everything. And it was just, it was surreal experience watching that top 8. Obviously I would have loved to be a part of it, but you know, I didn't turns out X2 didn't make top 8 anyway because they oversold the event. And they had 297 players, which means you had to be X1. So even at the point that I completely choked and threw, it didn't end up mattering because the real loss happened earlier in the tournament, and I was out of it from the beginning. So yeah, definitely something I need to work on for sure. I think this deck is good. And yeah, and like I said, watching the top 8, it was so cool. Seeing them in the feature match area, like Matt versus a true hero in the finals, was awesome. And then, of course, the clickbait of this video, we're going to get to that. I did purchase the second place Black Rose giant card from a true hero. I spent more money than I should have on it, and I didn't spend as much as I would have liked. I obviously would have liked to pay him a more fair price, but I'm going to do something cool with that card, and I'm thinking I'm going to give it away at RBET Moreno Valley. So if you guys want to come to that, there's a little bit of extra incentive. It's like a $1,500 giant card, and I'll figure out how I'm going to give it away, but I'm definitely going to be giving it away at that event. And I'm just like, this is a really hard video for me to record, because yeah, I didn't think I was going to talk about this stuff ever, and I just think it's important to, because it's real, and like I always keep it real with you guys, like, or at least I try to, I always try to keep it real, because that's life, we're not like fucking kids no more, I'm not making Fortnite videos for some kids. I'm trying to build a community here, and like part of building a community is just being fucking real, Part of the reason we all linked up at Nats is because we all kept it fucking real, We all needed this for one reason or another. We all needed to come together and play this game. So I'd be really excited to see you guys at RBET. Either one, But if you can make it to Moreno Valley, that'd be really fucking cool, because that's the next one. So the links to that will be in the description below. I had an amazing event. Like I said, it was one of the best weekends of my life. And yeah, I think that's it. I'm going to do more coverage of the top 8 decks over the next few days. I might even upload the Amaryllis deck, which is the one everyone wants to see, within the next few hours. So I hope you guys, stay enjoying the stuff, and I'll see you in the next vid. Peace.